Chapter 187, Your Only Need to Sign. Zhu Tui had thought that there would be a lot of books. However, senior brother Meng Sixi only brought 20 paper books and a projection card. These 20 paper books could not be read on the public website, so they were borrowed separately. However, there were more than 100 books in the projection card. Meng Sixi was no longer jealous of this junior brother who had secretly entered the sect. He felt that Zhu Tui was no longer the target of his jealousy because he was too high above him. He could not feel the jealousy. He had to look up to just the flying sword warrior. Therefore, Meng Sixi planned to introduce Zhu Tui to his senior brothers in the future. He believed that the expressions on those senior brothers' faces would be very interesting. Next, Meng Sixi spent an hour explaining the situation within the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association to Zhu Tui in detail, including the identification of the members and their contributions. Of course, Zhu Tui did not need to worry about this for the time being with Shen Jushuang as his backer. Zhu Tui planned to leave early. This way, he could rush back to school before class in the afternoon. However, his new master, Shen Jushuang, arranged a meal for Zhu Tui at noon. He introduced a few people to Zhu Tui, including the person in charge of the Capital Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association. It could be considered one of the invisible benefits. It was almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon after the meal. Zhu Tui still had to squeeze through the bus and subway. Taxis were not expensive, but they were also very congested. Public transportation was much safer. Of course, he could be sent to school in half an hour by taxi. However, the problem was that he could not afford it. At this stage, Zhu Tui could only use his time to save money. However, when Zhu Tui was waiting for the bus outside the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association, a luxury repulsion vehicle suddenly stopped beside him and lowered the window. Before Zhu Tui could rejoice, Mai Qingfei leaned out of the repulsive force flying car. Little flying sword, you're alone today. Why didn't Brother Murong bring you along? Mai Qingfei asked Zhu Tui. I'm doing something private. Has your car been fixed? Zhu Tui knew that he was wrong the moment he said that. The chance to hitch a ride was gone. His level of chatting was to F King high. As expected, Mai Qingfei's face darkened. She pushed with her hand, and the repulsive force instantly accelerated, throwing a large ball of air towards Zhu Tui's face. Since Brother Murong isn't here, then take your time. Zhu Tui was speechless. In the afternoon, Zhu Tui decisively skipped class. The main reason was that Zhang Ziking had sent a cooperation agreement along with a few suggestions to earn some quick money in the short term. He had to start making money on Sunday. Otherwise, he would not have been able to cultivate for more than 10 days with the money he had left after he had taken out the loan. Sunday was a rather ample time to make use of. However, Zhu Tui still went to the emergency center to visit Kai Hongying. He then handed the cooperation agreement to Chai Zhao. He asked the law firm behind Chai Zhao to see if there were any problems with the contract. The percentage that Zhang Ziking had set was not high. It was within the range that Zhu Tui could accept. However, he still had to be careful about the contract trap. However, Zhu Tui suddenly received good news when he was visiting Kai Hongying. On Saturday night, the school would hold a celebration party for their victory in the actual combat competition. That was not the good news. This was to be expected. The good news was that the additional reward might be cash. The number might not be less than 100,000. It was good news to Zhu Tui as long as he had money. 100,000 was a lot. He could cultivate for a few more days with this amount. Saturday morning, and Zhao Xoxui, who rarely left the Research Institute number 14, wore a white coat and a blue mask. She arrived at the 28th floor of the Genetic Research Institute's office building and knocked on the door of one of the offices. The door opened. The person sitting inside was the vice chairman of the Genetic Research Institute, Lu Guangqing. Lu Guangqing had a lot of work to do. Every Wednesday morning and Saturday morning, he would be in the Genetic Research Institute dealing with official matters. And Zhao Xoxui could be said to have come on time. Lu Guangqing was a little surprised to see in Zhao Xoxui. He asked his assistant to welcome her. Zhao Xoxui, you're a rare guest. Why are you looking for me today? Lu Guangqing was very kind. It's like this, Vice Chairman Lu. Our Research Institute number 14 accepted an intern researcher who is also a student. He has been an intern for almost 2 months now. Currently, most of the maintenance business of the Research Institute number 14 is handed over to him. That's why I specially came to you to solve his identity problem. It just so happens that our Research Institute number 14 has been short-handed." And Zhao Saxui handed over Zhu Tui's information as she spoke. Lu Guangqing smiled and took the documents from Zhao Saxui. He looked at them carefully but shook his head as he read. "Zhao Saxui, I know that the Research Institute number 14 is short-handed. However, Zhu Tui is still a student. He did not have any research results and was directly promoted to an assistant researcher. This is against the rules. I can't sign your application," Lu Guangqing said gently. "How about this? I can't approve his status as an assistant researcher, but I can approve the 10,000 yuan's monthly special research allowance that you applied for Zhu Tui. Also, isn't the Research Institute number 14 short of people? I have 2 candidates for assistant researchers. Pick one." Lu Guangqing smiled and took out 2 sets of information. And Zhao Saxui did not even look. "Our Research Institute number 14 doesn't need any other assistants," as she spoke, and Zhao Saxui pushed Zhu Tui's information back to Lu Guangqing. "Vice Chairman Lu, according to the rules, you have to approve Zhu Tui as an assistant researcher. Also, the 40 million research funds that you deducted from the short-term research project of our Research Institute number 14 have to be redistributed," and Zhao Saxui said as she looked at Lu Guangqing quietly. Lu Guangqing looked at the serious and Zhao Saxui and suddenly laughed. "Zhao Saxui, are you serious? I'm always serious. Reason? Or rather, which of your requirements meets the rules of our Genetic Research Institute?" "Vice Chairman Lu, Zhu Tui has indeed produced relevant results. He has also obtained the approval of Principal Wen Xinglan, who also holds a position in the Wuxia Genetic Research Institute. All the results have been reported. The reason I asked you to come here today is to ask you to sign the document as per the procedure. I'm not here to obtain your permission." And Zhao Xu's voice was very calm, but it made Lu Guangqing inexplicably angry. She was only here to get his signature. Who did he think he was? A signature puppet? This and Zhao Saxui was too arrogant. In an instant, the smile on Lu Guangqing's face disappeared. "And Zhao Saxui, I have to remind you that Zhu Tui's performance in the combat exchange a few days ago was astonishing. He was indeed very outstanding. However, such a result will not affect our Genetic Research Institute." And Zhao Saxui frowned and pushed Zhu Tui's information to Lu Guangqing. "Vice Chairman Lu, are you sure you looked at the last page of the document? There are research results that have been approved by the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College. They have been reported to the Wuxia Genetic Committee and are currently being reviewed." Lu Guangqing was a little puzzled because from what he knew, and Zhao Saxui was not such a reckless person. However, Zhu Tui's information was too simple. As a first-year student, the most outstanding thing he could bring out was his combat results. Therefore, he only flipped through it roughly. So when he heard that there were research results that had already been recognized by the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College and was reported to the Wuxia Genetic Committee, his expression immediately changed. This meant that there were research results. He took Zhu Tui's thick stack of documents and flipped to the last page. The last page was just a simple certificate issued by the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College and an acceptance letter from the Wuxia Genetic Committee. The title was "The 8th Reflex Type Genetic Base Point Discovered by Zhu Tui. From the Research Institute number 14 seconds intern and the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College's Professor Luo Shifeng has been verified. 5 volunteers have been successfully replicated. Today, we have received a summary of the 8th Reflexes Type Genetic Base Point discovered by Zhu Tui, an intern researcher at the Research Institute number 14, and Luo Shifeng, a professor at the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College. We have begun to arrange for a reproduction of the test subjects. Please wait for good news." This was a letter from the Wuxia Genetic Committee. These 2 pieces of evidence only represented one thing. Zhu Tui had actually produced research results. His research results meant that the Research Institute number 14 had also produced research results. Moreover, he was ranked first. Lu Guangqing did not know if there was anything fishy about this. However, he knew that Luo Shifeng would not cooperate with Zhao Saxui if there was no huge price to pay for leaving his name in history. Moreover, the certification of the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College itself was a very authoritative certification. This basically meant that this research had a result. In other words, the Research Institute number 14 had really produced results. In that case, there was no reason to deduct funds from the short-term research projects. Moreover, he had to give Zhu Tui his assistant researcher position. Otherwise, after this research was verified by the Wuxia Genetic Committee and published on the news, if Zhu Tui was still an intern researcher and Zhao Xoxui would just have to step in and say something, Lu Guangqing would most likely be the one to fall into the storm of public opinion. Over the years, the Wuxia sector had been extremely annoyed by the lack of results in the research industry. In other words, what Zhao Xoxui said was true. Lu Guangqing could only sign on the paper today. He sensed that he had been ruthlessly defeated by Zhao Xoxui. However, he had a high status. He was naturally someone who could let go. Although he was very unhappy, he still signed it. Alright, Zhu Tui's status as an assistant researcher and the funds for the short-term research project of the Research Institute number 14 will be completed within a working day. Lu Guangqing suddenly smiled. However, you have to choose one of the two candidates I recommended to you. Why? What if I don't choose? This time, it was Zhao Xu's turn to be confused. The two people I recommended are the financial supervisors of the Research Institute number 14, yes, as assistant researchers. All the other research institutes had financial supervisors, except for the Research Institute number 14, so you have to choose one. Otherwise, before the financial inspector arrived, the research funds of the Research Institute number 14 would not be allocated. Yes, including the funds for the long-term project related to the abnormal mind power load that were promised to the Research Institute number 14. With that, Lu Guangqing leaned back slightly and waited for Zhao Xu's answer with a smile. Lu Guangqing had thought of this arrangement after watching the actual combat 2 days ago. He had originally planned to send a document to the Research Institute number 14 in a few days. He did not expect Zhao Xoxui to come over today and ruthlessly beat him up. It was a slap to his face, so he took the opportunity to throw it out. The financial inspector? Yes, you have to have one of them. Lu Guangqing smiled. This was his counterattack. Oh, I see. Make the arrangements. He'll welcome it. With that, Zhao Xoxui picked up the application form that Lu Guangqing had just signed and left nonchalantly. Lu Guangqing was left behind with a bored expression. This counterattack did not seem to have any effect. However, he finally managed to get into Research Institute number 14.